Hey guys, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be taking a look at two examples to see how macros can help you with search optimization and for saving you time in conducting tedious SPLs or long SPLs. In this example, we're going to be working with Splunk's practice data. Let's take a look at some of the predefined macros that come with this data. You can see them by going to Settings, Advanced Search, Search Macros. Here are the names of the macros that they have defined and their associated SPLs. As you can see here, this SPL is very long and it would take a long time to hand jam all of that into your search bar. Instead, what a macro allows you to do is just type the name of the macro surrounded by backticks and it will execute the defined SPL that was made when creating the macro. So let's take a look at a first example of how to use a macro. In Splunk, you always want to do best practice when running searches, keeping in mind search optimization and trying to limit the amount of data that you're pulling from disk. So the best way to limit this is to use the time picker value and set it to the smallest time range window where you know your data resides. The next best thing is to probably define an index. Here you can see we're using the wildcard, which is definitely not best practice. And it's really not going to allow for an efficient search to run, as it's going to take a lot of time to parse through all of those indexes, when instead, for example, if we wanted to look at the web security and sales indexes only, we can define a macro that just allows us to search on those three indexes and creates a better search optimization instance instead of using the wildcard. So what you could do is just type up here index equals web, or what index equals security, or index equals sales as one long search query. But if you're constantly having to look at those three indexes every day, you're going to get tired of typing out every single index you may want to define. And some of you may have queries where you need to define 10 or 15 indexes at a time to see the data that you want, and you're having to do that on a daily basis. So let's make a macro that defines our indexes that we want to search. When it comes to naming conventions, I always try to stick to the most simple kind of name that I'm going to remember that's applicable for my use case of how I'm trying to implement it. So here I'm just going to call this macro SWS, and that's going to stand for Sales, Web, and Security. And here is where you define your SPL. Go ahead and save it. Let's make sure it populates. There it is. There's my SPL. Let's go ahead and run it just to verify. And as we can see, the three indexes of sales, security, and web have populated here. And we didn't need to type out nearly as long of an SPL as we would have had to with the Boolean of ORs. Let's take a look at another example to see how a macro can help you save time. Here we're looking at some internal data provided by Splunk, and we see that schedule time is in the default value of epoch time. The epoch time isn't really a friendly user view to see what date this is. So usually we'd have to convert it with the following syntax. And that took me, a good chunk of time to type all this out, making sure there's no errors or anything like that, just to convert my epoch into a more friendly date time range. So let's make this a macro. Let's go ahead and copy this. Add a new. Again, with the naming convention, name it something that you'll remember. This one, just gonna call it convert time because that's what I want the macro to do. I'll paste in the SPL associated to it, click save, make sure it populates, and then we're gonna run it. And there you have it. That took me significantly less time instead of using strife time command with all the percentages for month, date, hours, minutes, and seconds to produce the same output. I hope these two examples have given you a starting point for where you can use macros to leverage your environment to either increase your search efficiency with maybe multiple indexes that you're always needing to run, make a macro that defines that super quick for you, or you can do it to save kind of maybe tedious SPLs that you're having to run all the time, as we've seen here for time conversion.